Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Samson. Because it was 4th of July yesterday, I hope that you had a great time, and if you're still celebrating for some reason, then more power to you, I guess. It's really more about the concept and the spirit than necessarily about the exact day itself. So even though my wishes are belated, they are in good faith, and I genuinely hope that all of you who did celebrate had a great time. And of course, when you translate that into Isaac, it was sort of a great time as well, because I feel like it was a very unique challenge. And of course, this is the same daily that we had last year when we played it, only in Afterbirth, and we had Dr. Fetus and Scatter Bombs. And Dr. Fetus is self-explanatory. It explodes, it goes boom. This is what usually humans do when we celebrate things. We tend to blow things up. And Scatter Bombs does work as that kind of a firework display. So when you have your large rocket, which splits into more small rockets, and of course they all shine and light in a very particular way. But I would say that scatter bombs don't really work that way in the game. They're really not visually appealing or even that nice to look at. They're mostly annoying. I would say in the best case scenario, scatter bombs are ineffective, and in the worst case scenario, they're just another way for you to take damage. And it's such a big bummer because it seems like a cool concept. You know, you have a bomb, it splits into more bombs, but it doesn't really work the way you would expect it to. I really wish that scatter bombs wouldn't hurt you, and that they would be bigger bombs, and they would also have more velocity to them. And that would just make them, I feel like, a lot more enjoyable. Or maybe that there would be a bombs that you could actually throw at an enemy, again, and they would split into more small bombs. I feel like that would give them a lot more potentiality. But as it is now, when you have to place a bomb on the ground, usually that's already pretty tough, because then you have to kind of predict where the enemy is going, and then when the small bombs come, usually the first bomb explosion already kills them, so the second bomb's explosion can't really do anything. And when you're trying to reroll on the reroll machines or the restock machines, usually what ends up happening is you can end up skipping an item, because not only is the first explosion gonna reroll it, it's also gonna be the second one. And what I think is the biggest crime and the biggest bummer of them all is that when you do use a scatter bomb and you get any other bomb item, so you know you maybe get sad bombs, a lot of the bomb synergies actually don't work with them. And when I say a lot, I really mean there's a few of them who don't work. For example, homing bombs, I'm pretty certain they don't work, but there are some others which work. For example, like I just mentioned, sad bombs. Or maybe even the better one is the Bomber Boy, so the one which explodes not in one spot, but it explodes in like an X shape. That doesn't work with scatter bombs, and that seems like the most obvious synergy of all, because not only do you have one large explosion which just devastates everything, you have a small explosion, one big explosion that devastates anything, and then like 5 small ones which also devastate everything in their path. And what gives them a little bit more unpredictability is that when sometimes it explodes, the first initial explosion explodes, sometimes the scatter bombs that come after aren't effective, but sometimes they are, and they just end up bouncing in random directions. So when you actually play with this item, you have to consider a lot of things to actually not get hit accidentally. And I feel like in one regard it's a very interesting challenge, because now suddenly not only you have to think about where the enemies are, where they're going to be, and of course how to place your bombs optimally, you also have to think about where your scatter bombs will be when they actually hit the ground, and for you not to be accidentally in the way of going about it. So that usually just means kind of shooting the corner and just kind of leave the bombs there to disperse and wait for them to explode. But I also think it leads into this playstyle that's very conservative. So you just shoot only one bomb, and then you dodge for a bit, then you shoot another bomb, and then you dodge for a bit. And that's okay. Obviously, you do what you have to do to win, but it really doesn't give me that fireworks feel. I feel like we should have a much bigger incentive to actually just shoot the bombs everywhere and just have large explosions going on. And that didn't really happen in this run. So I guess you can say in that regard it was a bit disappointing, but in other regard it was a fun challenge, because now suddenly you have to think about so many things at once. And because of the nature of the daily, I would expect a lot of people to accidentally get hit a lot, so the damage penalty would be higher. And I know that some people that exist maybe play the dailies and judge their absolute score, and they maybe feel like they're doing really badly, but they don't consider how other people might be doing. And in this particular case, obviously, when you consider a lot of things, is that people will take a lot of damage. It's just that kind of daily. So even if maybe your scores are suboptimal, maybe you don't make it to a particular objective, there's still hope for you to actually end up in a pretty good ranking. And that is exactly, or at least somewhat, how my run went. Even though I managed to miss boss rush in this one, it was mostly because I took a little bit too much liberty with time when I was trying to get to angel statues, and I did decide to go for an angel room run because it seemed more fitting, because we had bombs to blow the angel statues, but it also seemed like the run was a bit stronger overall, so we would actually be able to make it pretty fast to whichever objective we were trying to make it. And it did turn out to be a good idea at the start, because we did get the relic, we got the Sacred Heart, obviously both pretty premium items, but as the run went on, I realized that maybe just taking so much time was a mistake. And the biggest reason for that is, of course, there are so many rooms and enemies which really don't work well with explosions, because you have to wait for them to land, maybe they teleport, maybe they split into more enemies, and there's just that a lot of waiting time for you to actually shoot them. Even though you have a very strong run, and you can pretty much dispose of any enemy in just one shot, there's a lot of waiting, a lot of guesswork where they will pop up because they have random behavior, and all of that just adds on top of what you already have, and that means it just takes a little bit longer for you to actually get through the rooms and get to the end, and of course get to angel rooms and whatnot. When you combine that with the fact that even when you get to the angel rooms, you still have to fight the angels, and they have quite a bit of HP, that just, again, adds a little bit more time on top of everything, and it just makes you kind of be late for whatever you're trying to get to in the first place. And what happened is, I went to the mount floor at the 17th minute. I felt like I was going to have enough time, but maybe just due to some unfortunate floor generation, the shop and the treasure room were on the far right, whereas the mount fight and the boss room were on the far left. So now suddenly I have to make a decision. Should I just go for the boss trap room, and I mean not boss trap, just the boss room to actually get to boss rush, or should I go explore and try to get maybe something like a blank heart from the shop, or maybe a good item for the treasure room? And of course I decided to go in the treasure room, thinking that I would have enough time to actually backtrack and go back. And I would have if there wasn't for that one big room which had, I think, cancers in them, the little guys which start panicking and just start shooting in 6 directions very rapidly. That was a bummer, and they just moved in such an unnatural pattern, and because the room was so big, it was actually quite hard to aim at them, and I just thought I actually beat them, where there was actually one more hiding in the corner somewhere, so that really didn't work out in my favor. But later on I also found a teleporter, a red chest, which teleported me to the angel room. Of course I decided to fight the angel statue for some reason, and it was the red scarfed one, which has a lot more HP, so that took me like another 20 seconds, and suddenly I was looking at 19 minutes. I only had 1 minute remaining in order to make it to boss rush. I still had to backtrack all the way from the right to the left, but I also had something like 5 rooms, which I still had to beat in order to get it there. And of course, I just knew that I just wasn't gonna make it. So I decided to explore the entirety rest of the floor, and it was kind of a devil in disguise, or maybe in this case it was an angel in disguise, because it was a good thing. But what ended up happening is I noticed the Whoop 1 and Whoop 2 were very large floors, and not only that, there were a lot of dead ends. I just didn't have any way to know where I was going, so I just ended up spending a lot of time in there, and I actually did manage to get to Hush in the nick of time. I only had something like a minute remaining, and if I did try to actually beat boss rush, I feel like I wouldn't have enough time to make it to Hush. And of course, when you consider maybe, but your run is strong, there's no reason not to, maybe you could have just gone a little bit faster. But if there were waves or bosses in boss rush which are just naturally annoying to deal with Dr. Fetus, so for example Fistula, or maybe any other enemy which splits out teleports, so Little Horn, things like that, it would just take so much more time to actually beat them, and maybe I would be finished something like the 25th minute, which would only give me something like 5 minutes to remain and explore the entirety of the Womb 1 floor and the Womb 2 floor in order to get to Harsh. So I just feel like naturally I would miss it. And of course, when you consider in that regard, it actually is a good thing that we miss boss rush, because now sadly we don't have to constrain our time to it. We can just go to the Harsh directly. And of course, if you have to choose, you would much rather go to Harsh as opposed to boss rush, because not only do you get 1,000 more points, but you also get an access to another shop, you get 2 items as opposed to 1, and you also get 4 golden chests as just a little cherry on top. And with all those things considered, I feel like we did make the right choice, even if it wasn't consciously, if that makes sense. So in that regard, I feel like it did turn out pretty well for us. And I think that's what gave me my optimism to continue, because, sometimes you end up making a mistake, you miss boss rush, and then your focus kind of drops a little bit, you just take a lot of unnecessary damage. But I felt like because we did make it to boss rush, and we didn't make it to boss rush, we made it to Harsh, so that worked in our favor. So maybe if someone else tried to go faster, maybe they had a bit of a lower exploration bonus, and of course that would end up costing them Harsh as well. So I just actually felt like we were ahead of the majority here, just due to the nature of the run. And of course, because there were so many damage, I actually felt like I was playing pretty decently up until a certain point. I didn't take too much damage, and of course at some point that just all broke down, and it just started eating bombs like they were breakfast. But it did turn out to be a very strong run, but also a very weak one. So in that sense that you kind of had to lower your expectation for what your score should look like if you actually wanted to get to the end. And like I said, I feel like that's what ultimately gave me my confidence to continue, and what gave me that extra spirit and thought on what to do in order to really maximize my score. So in the end, I did get a Temperance card, and what I thought of doing here, of course, because I had the room bag, is First, explore the entirety of the floor. Try to get as many runes as possible. Yaras, Perkos, blank cards, and just collect them all in the secret room. And of course, what I do in the secret room is reroll the item pedestals. I had a Temperance card, so if I had a Yara rune, I would be able to duplicate it, and that would give me 2 pedestals, and of course more Percho runes to reroll things with. And that would allow me to eventually either find a blank card, so that would allow me to combo it with Yara, or a Forget-Me-Now, which would allow me to do the whole floor again. And what some people don't realize is, if you use the Forget-Me-Now on a Mega Satan fight, you can actually do it again. Even if maybe you think that you lose the key pieces, you actually don't. You can go beat Mega Satan, use the Forget-Me-Now, and then beat Mega Satan again. And this only works in dailies. It doesn't work in regular runs. You lose the key, because otherwise there's no way for you to actually finish the run. So that is how I wanted to go about it. But what ended up happening, it was very surprising. I tried to blow up the Temperance machine, or the Blood Bank, and it ended up exploding, just giving me coins. It didn't give me any item pedestals. And I'm not sure why that happened. Is it maybe because of the new patch? Is it because this was a special daily? Maybe there's some rules associated with that. Obviously, I could have played the Blood Bank myself, and eventually it would pay out with Blood Bag, because not only did I have enough health, I also had Ivy Bag, I also had the Bloody Penny, so that would allow me to regenerate my health pretty much indefinitely. So in all those regards, I could have played it and got another item pedestal, but I thought I could just blow it up and just get it naturally, and it just didn't happen. So that was, I guess, surprising, but also a bit unexpected. So that's, I think, a good thing to consider when you're actually going in the future. Don't just blow your machines up, try to play them first, so you can actually try to get an item that way, and only then blow them up if you have no other choice. So, but I'm not really sure what ended up happening there, because I'm pretty sure that if you blow up a machine on the dark room or the chest, you're supposed to get an item out of it. But regardless, we did finish the run in the 35th place, which is like top 30, which is, like I said, even though we performed really badly, didn't make it to boss rush, a lot of damage penalty, we still managed to pretty much nail this daily in that regard. We got a bunch of score, we completed all the important objectives, and we actually did manage to get in a pretty good spot. So it was an enjoyable daily, even if a bit different. I feel like it was challenging, but in the right way, and I feel like we need more dailies like this. So I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.